On this week's episode of Make It Rain, we're going to go ahead and talk through some marketplace insights, get some edge on the upcoming slate, and maybe, just maybe, someone here on the crew hit for $20,000 and made it rain last week. Let's find out how. Let's get it. Welcome to episode number 4 of Make It Rain, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Week 7 of the NFL already. Pretty wild. You know, time flies when you're having fun. Joined by the GOATs here, Mr. Theric, Jake, and JJ. Fellas, how you doing?
Doing good.
Doing well, man. I jinxed myself. I was running pretty injury free, and then I had to say something in chat, and you know how it goes. Once you say something, Marquise Brown hurts his leg, out for probably months. I don't know, but that's just how it is. So keeping up with the 2 injury average, but still having fun with it. How about yourselves?
Yeah, I'm feeling the injury bug as well over here. I'd say I got Dobbins out now. I got Jameis out, Landry out. All my 3 legendaries that I got. It's pretty rough, but hey, we're keeping on. Another week. Never know what's going to happen.
Theric, how'd that week for you?
It went better than normal, but yeah, I think my highest owned player was Marquise Brown, and so a lot of those profits just got sunk into replacing him in lineups. So, and then I had Jeff Wilson, and he basically got injured too. So, yeah, I definitely lost some money.
Really reiterates, right? Like why you got to be on top of news, and as soon as it happens, who's the next man up, right? And who's the next alternative? Are they actually going to play an increased role, or is it going to be more of a share split, right? And so, got to really make a lot of quick decisions because people are buying right as soon as that news comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So last night, obviously, some breaking news in the NFL. Big Christian McCaffrey trade. Heading over to the San Francisco 49ers for a slew of draft picks. Obviously, that's going to cause some ripples here in the Rainmakers marketplace. JJ, did you have any insight there or anything you want to touch on and how this impacts everything moving forward from a waiver wire perspective?
Man, I've been holding my McCaffrey moments or cards for a long time. And so this is a good cash out opportunity, I think. I Elite, it was hovering around 550. Probably when the news announced, I thought the risk reward was pretty much there just based on the news. I do weirdly think, though, that this raises the ceiling on CMC, but lowers his floor a bit, right? Because we know Shanahan's offense, they rotate the running backs left and right. There could probably be 3 playing. And it's good for the long-term health of CMC, right? I'm much more comfortable holding him and not worried about him getting injured as much through the season as his usage is just way too high, right, for players' health. But if you're like me and the rest of the crew here, and you got burned by the Marquise Brown injury, there are these waiver wire pickup opportunities every week. There's going to be auctions on players. There's going to be 4 or 5 that haven't been released to the market, and there's going to be 2 that are already on the market with not their full supply released, right? So, for example, in this week, I think you could pick up Dortch for Cardinals, who wasn't on the Rainmakers shop before. And you could also pick up a player like D-Hop, who has been, but he's now come into play. And so I think that these are kind of being slept on just because of how often they go and how many cards are trying to sell at a time. I swear to God, it's like 50 auctions of the same player at the same time. So if you're not new to NFTs, it's like bricking the floor, right? For the NFTs. Mm-hmm. Just everyone kind of selling these different listings of different serial numbers. So, I got a pretty good deal on a D-Hop. I got number 9 for probably $430, which I think, after he just slid right in there on his usage. So really happy to have him in my portfolio and my crew for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think there's some good points, man. Like, I think there's a lot of opportunity there for these auctions. So if you are looking to buy, that's going to be probably the best time is trying to hop in one of these auctions. like JJ said, like it's going to be a big influx of supply, especially when they do one player in multiple editions, like they did for D Hop. Like they did 30 elites and 10 legendaries all at the same time, and that's new supply coming on the market. And you have to be there at the same time. So that lessens the amount of people you are going to be competing with for that moment. And there's also obviously multiple of them. So it presents some good buying opportunities. And at the same time, if there's auctions on cards that you have, it might be a good time to sell them before the auction and maybe buy back if you want to. I don't know 100% if the marketplace fees, the 10% marketplace fee is going to cover that, but just something to think about if you are looking to sell a player and they have an auction coming up. Obviously, it would be best to do so beforehand.
Yeah, and for rares and cores, they just listed them on the shop, right? Like all under the same one listing, and you could just buy them all for the same price. Derek, I think you picked up a ton of D-Hop, right?
I actually sold into Thursday night's game. I bought him when he was around 50, I think it was, last week before he had returned, and then Wednesday and Thursday I sold him for like an average of like $65-$70. So I think he's going to be great going on, but I'm trying something new, and I realized I could make profits by just selling him last night, and so I did that, but I will be buying them again later on in this season.
Hey man, like we said, marketplace came first, and you're playing the marketplace game, and couldn't have played that one better, in my opinion.
It certainly is the name of the game here, right? We've said it all along. It is a marketplace game first and foremost, and I think other things to look out for here. The Niners do have a very crowded backfield. I wouldn't be surprised if they do move one of those running backs into the trade deadline. Obviously, that's a little more speculation, but something to keep an eye on because Eli Mitchell and obviously Jeff Wilson are quite the talents at running back themselves, and they probably carry some good real life value as well. So something to monitor. And then obviously, you're hearing a lot of the rumors around DJ Moore as well in Carolina as they kind of strip that thing down over there. So seeing where he moves, I don't think Carolina is going to be an offense to target by any means here moving forward, but it would open up some opportunity, obviously, for the two running backs they have back there and guys like Laviska Shenault and whatever other, just a guy type of player they have back there. But again, things to monitor and things to kind of stay ahead of the game on as well. Anyone else want to wrap up the marketplace segment with any other thoughts?
Yeah, real quick. What do you guys think about McCaffrey's price bump here? Do you think it's warranted?
I think he has tournament winning upside now, whereas before he probably didn't, right? If you're playing a superstar, you really are sacrificing elsewhere. Like, got to go to the comparables, right? If I'm playing McCaffrey, I'm not playing Eckler this week, right? Or I'm not playing Derrick Henry, or I'm not playing Cooper Kupp most weeks. And so you got to really ask yourself, is he going to get 30 points? Probably not in that offense that he was before, even though he did come close a few times. But in this new one, I think his ceiling is, almost uncapped at this point. So I think that the price is warranted.
Completely agree. Looking at statistics and fantasy production and everything this season, I think the only running back that really could challenge someone like Josh Allen or Cooper Kupp or another superstar for the guy that you needed to have it before was Austin Eckler. And now with Christian McCaffrey and this offense, such a high upgrade, his floor, we'll see what that does, but he has easy potential for 30, 35 point games now. And so he's someone that if you are competing against people that are playing Josh Allen only puts up 25. Christian McCaffrey could easily beat that.
So that was kind of our breaking news segment. I think I termed it as our marketplace segment, but I think we'll transition into our official marketplace segment here. Touched on CMC. Obviously, it's going to have an impact, right, across the board and have a little domino effect. But as we move into the marketplace and kind of get a broader scope on the gainers and losers of last week, obviously we see Josh Jacobs kind of shooting up the board here in the core and rarity segments. A couple other names that are popping up, especially DeAndre Hopkins, who obviously made his return coming off his 6-game suspension last night. So, did anything catch your guys' eye, Derek, on the marketplace movement here?
So yeah, there's a few people that makes sense to me. Marquise Brown being so far down because of the injury. He's not out for the season, but he is out for at least probably 6 weeks. So his decline makes sense. Jeff Wilson, because of Christian McCaffrey coming in, doesn't have nearly the amount of production that he was before. That makes sense. I think the others that have gone down are just kind of people fluctuating based on current pricing and trying to get deals. The weekly gainers, the one that really sticks out to me is Josh Jacobs, which he's very good. He's in a very strong bell cow role, but he's really shot up more than I would expect him to. And I'm wondering if he's kind of overshot. And if we get a good week, but not an amazing week this week, he'll probably drop down in price a little bit as people come to realize that he's not the league winner that is being touted right now. And then that's what sticks out to me. Tua and Tyreek makes sense. People want to get on that offense now that Tua is back, because we all remember the game versus the Ravens and how just absolutely ridiculous that was. And then Christian McCaffrey pumped in a little bit just because of his transfer. I think his fantasy production is more solidified in the new rank. But most of it makes sense. I think there's a little bit of an overreaction with Josh Jacobs. Other than that, I think the market's done pretty well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I would probably add that you're starting as the prices kind of go down, just across the board. I think Elite's just continuing the trend. Rare was a little up weirdly, and then Core was just continuing the trend of going down week to week. I think you're starting to see matchups be more important and more priced in, right? You look at these and the top gainers, right? Jimmy G versus the Chiefs. It's going to be probably a pace up game, right? And obviously the McCaffrey news will bump him somewhat, right? And Jacobs is in that smash spot that we mentioned. Probably an overreaction, I would agree, but something to keep in mind. And just wanted to add on the McCaffrey note, like he went from Carolina, a team that was probably going to play 2 or less showdown games, to a team that's going to play 3 more. So that's probably another reason why his value kind of held up there. And Tyreek Hill, right? Do you just have to play him every single week, right? And then just if he blows up, just take it. Sorry, if he just puts a dud, just take it, and if not, he's going to break the slate. Kind of seems like it.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of these guys getting pumped up because of these matchups, these good matchups, and I think that can also present an opportunity, kind of similar to how the bye weeks work, where if you want to go, a week ahead, maybe they'll have a best matchup this week, and maybe it's like okay, but then they have a really good matchup the following week. Buy them this week, play them, and then sell into that great matchup if their price pumps it up, or if not, then you can just play them in that good matchup too, right? So I think there's some opportunity here as we see these quite large fluctuations. What I think we all agree is like might be a little bit too big of a fluctuation for Josh Jacobs, especially when they do get these good matchups going.
Yeah, I think that's all very valuable insight, fellas. Again, as with injuries and breaking news and things of that nature, right? These are all the gainers and losers to pay attention to week, because things do happen quick and we need to stay on top of it. And it's always good to kind of cycle through it as the week goes along, as we do here on the show, to kind of see where exactly the money is moving into and out of based on the news. And you can kind of reflect upon it as the week goes on. Any other finishing thoughts there from anyone?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of say, like, with these matchups kind of proving themselves to be important to the value in these this week and the week past and the coming weeks, probably there's an opportunity to kind of pick up players for showdown and then pretty much offload them either at an increase or at cost, right? So a good example of that is Austin Eckler, right? For the Broncos Chargers showdown, he was in a really good spot, probably the only one I considered for captain, and that worked out pretty well. But also in this really high total game for the Seahawks versus the Chargers, right? So his price actually increased going into this weekend, where you could just basically play him for free if you wanted to. Same thing with D-Hop, right? $60, as Derek mentioned prior to the game. Right now he's sitting at maybe around $80-$70. So someone you could either offload for cost or make even a profit on.
Love that.
Yeah, that's super sharp. Very valuable insight there, JJ. Thank you very much, man. All right, so as we kind of teased in the trailer, one of us, just so happened to be me, every blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, hit for a $20,000 payday this past week on Rainmakers. Definitely a welcome surprise. Obviously, why we do it, we say it's a marketplace game, but at the end of the day, we are submitting our lineups and playing to kind of win prizes along the way as well. Nice little cherry on top. So we will lead in with that and just kind of take a look at the lineup and some of the thought process behind it. This is a lineup, to be honest, that I haven't really played the marketplace game with elites as much week to week. This is a lineup that I kind of pinpointed early on in the season and just kind of bought some elites off secondary and formed a lineup that I thought would at least compete to cash week in and week out. And so I started with just a very basic stack, Burrow and Chase, which I thought captured enough ceiling week to week. Obviously, Saquon, without the superstar status, has pretty much been just an easy lock week to week. And then the two spots I generally will rotate based on island games and showdowns and things of that nature, depending on who's available. You get guys like Diggs and Kelsey, who I thought was an easy spot to kind of exploit this week with a high total matchup and hopefully a back and forth affair, which it did turn out to be, and get a little mini stat correlation going in there. So that's kind of how I've played this lineup, to be honest. Majority of these players, I would say all of them, I have owned since week one and haven't really tinkered too much. I've just been throwing it in. I kind of looked back at some of the history of the Burrow Chase stack that I've played to this point, and it has cashed every week, whether that be a pack, some winnings, obviously this big payday here. So I feel obviously pretty good about how it's played out. I know that there's obviously many different ways to play the game, and there are other areas in the marketplace where I do try to attack week to week, but I also have to be somewhat mindful of time throughout the week and just make it as efficient as possible. So this is kind of the way I decided to approach it early on, and was lucky enough to have it work out just a little bit. So I will take this one to the bank. The check's already been written to the fiance, so I won't be seeing any of this. So we will let her go have a little shopping spree at Nordstrom Rack or wherever they go.
What a guy.
I don't know, but yeah,
what a guy.
Who
wouldn't want to marry you?
You know, happy wife, happy life. Exactly. So we'll let her do whatever she needs to do with it. But definitely, yeah. Thank you guys.
Yeah, I mean, come on, you dirty dog. We know you played the LSU narrative. Get out of here. Playing it week to week. Sure. No, I'm just playing, I know you had this since the very beginning, but man, that narrative was strong, right? I played it myself. Didn't have the secondary stack, which I thought was a great idea on your end, but still cashed based on that. But it ain't no 20 G's, I'll tell you that.
Go ahead, Tarek.
I was going to say, actually going to ask you, do you usually play secondary stacks like that? It's definitely something not a lot of people are doing right now. So I was curious if you do it much and if you've had some success with it.
I try to. I definitely try to, especially in the elite contests. I think when you're really gunning for that 100K, I think that's kind of where I've had some of my focus. Usually I'll probably usually end up with about 4 to 5 elite lineups, depending on what the island games are. But in what I consider to be my most competitive lineups, I will look for that extra correlation and try to hit with that in mind. That's kind of how I've been trying to play it to this point. Obviously, like JJ alluded to, the Burrow Chase narrative was there, and it's set up that way, right? It was just one of those weeks where all the dominoes kind of fell in order here. This week might be a little bit of the same, and that's kind of how I wanted to approach a lineup build like this. It's just something that could capture that upside week to week that you felt comfortable with playing. So that extra correlation, I think, does come in handy when you can hit on it, obviously. So obviously it's not going to be, it's not going to work like this week to week, but I think that extra correlation does give you a little chance, a little extra edge week to week to try and hit on something like this.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think you pointed it out, Derek, too, that you do want to play the highest players though, or highest projected players. So I don't just throw in secondary stacks with like bums or players that will probably get 20 as their ceilings, right? So just to your point earlier, you always want to play these players who you think can get 25, 30 points, right?
Yep.
Just because to win these contests, you're going to need 25 or 30. Fine for cash, right? Definitely comfortable playing those in the single entries or the player card competitions. But in this big GPP, it's only the ones that are going to get the higher ceilings for me.
I can't speak for higher tiers of contests, but at least in rare, it seems to be about 150 is kind of where you're aiming for to have a good chance to take it down. Some weeks it's a little lower, some weeks it's a little higher, but that means kind of 20, like you said, 25, 30 points is what you're aiming for your skill players. And so trying to get that third string receiver that usually gets 5 points, maybe 15 ceiling, it's just not going to cut it to take down these tournaments. And so if you can find a secondary stack that still has a really high protection, that's why I was kind of curious, because it's a really good secondary stack, but most people right now are doing the stack, the wide receiver quarterback stack with a bring back, and not a lot of people are doing a second game as a stack. So that's something that was really cool to see, and it's really awesome that it worked out for you.
Yeah, look, it doesn't work out that cleanly every week by any means, especially because, again, like I have not been chasing elite cards on the marketplace to form most optimal projection lineups week to week, right? So obviously being able to play rares up into elite helps. There have been weeks where I felt like a Jalen Hurts rare lineup or a rare Jalen Hurts quarterback lineup was my best lineup, and I would pair it with like an elite Devontae Smith or something like that and kind of fill in the gaps that way. But this week it did happen to just kind of make the puzzle pieces fit quite nicely. So I was pretty happy with it. Obviously, looking at the first place lineup here, exactly the same. He just decided to run with Ramondre Stevenson. And that's the way it goes, right? That's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. And so we just kind of roll with it and move on to the next week. But
and it's DFS as well. So there's not one guaranteed strategy that will make you win every single week. There's just, you're trying to find the edges and trying to figure out strategies that will allow you to have to be right on the fewest number of decisions as possible versus just throwing in 5 random guys and hoping that they all hit. And it's a lot easier if you can say, okay, I think I'm right about these 2 games, and so I'm going to make 2 stacks on those 2 games, and if they hit, then I'm going to do very well.
Yeah, really well said. And I think that's why you've seen some game stacks, right, take it down in some weeks, right? Like Lions versus Seahawks, Dolphins versus Baltimore, right? It sometimes, if you can simplify that decision-making process for yourself, and if you're really right one time, it can pay off because you only need 5 players in this slate. So if the game goes for 90, 80 points, you're probably winning if you stack that game.
And I will add, in fairness, right? I mean, this is a lineup that I would feel comfortable rolling out any week. The game stack just happened to match up, but from a projection standpoint as well, it's probably going to play pretty strongly week in and week out as well.
Yes,
the schedule has to line up as such to kind of make all the puzzle pieces fit. But so a little luck that way as well. But
there's no players that you would. I agree. There's no players on that lineup that I just kind of look at and say, why would you play that person? And, every single player in that lineup makes complete sense why you would play them. So
sure.
There's no Taysom Hill on this slate, so you don't have to ask that.
Yep. I know. Talk about optimal builds. Get some Taysom Hill in there, and call it a day.
Bridgewaters in the top 10 lineups.
Derek, did you want to touch on any final contests here that you had some success with?
There's one that was hitting pretty hard until the Kansas City Buffalo game went off, but it was, let me pull it up really quick. So this was a lineup that I kept getting notified as the day was going on that was basically sitting in first place for the first half of Sunday. And I try to not look at lineups because I usually expect something like this to happen. But for this one that I was going for the elite Cortland Sutton, I wanted one that was kind of off base, that wasn't a Bills Chiefs stack. And so I went with the Lamar Jackson stack because he was projected really well even against Baltimore. He's a superstar that could definitely beat Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. At that game didn't do as well as expected. And then just kind of surrounded that little stack with players that were projected really well. Waddle and Tyreek were players that I know a lot of people were concerned about because of the third string quarterback going for Miami. But from what we've seen, they've basically been quarterback proof. They have such yak ability that it really doesn't matter who's throwing to them. If that quarterback can at least get the ball 10 yards downfield, they're going to do the rest of the work. And so Waddle and Hill didn't really concern me too much because I thought they still had the ceiling. Pittman is just he just racks up all the targets with Jonathan Taylor out. I thought he was a really good play in lineups. I really loved him last week just because there was nobody else that was going to see all the targets. I didn't expect Matt Ryan to throw 50 times, but I was hoping for like 10 target or 10 catches and a potentially a touchdown. But that one went really well. And then Mixon was just kind of a pivot off of everybody was going on to the narrative, the LSU narrative with Chase and Burrow. And so if that narrative didn't hit too, then who's the pivot off of those two? And it's probably Mixon's having a great game. And so that is how I built this. It was in first for a lot. The Baltimore kind of fizzled out at the end of the game there, and Mixon didn't quite get there, but I was pretty happy with it. It's kind of what I try to do if I'm building a line that doesn't have the chalk pieces, is how do they fail, and who, if they fail, who's probably going to beat them.
Yeah,
great.
really. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, JJ. Go ahead.
Really smart building. I mean, I think we talked about it a lot in the Discord, and we talked about it a lot last week. I wasn't high on the Seahawks Cardinals games. Division games tend to be really weird. Their history even weirder between those two teams. So I was off a lot of those players. I did play, I think, Marquise Brown in a lineup or two, but it's like, if you go off the chalk, like what games are exploding, and I think going to Jackson and Andrews was a good play. I definitely played one of those lineups myself, and there's a lot of those opportunities this week too. Even I would think.
Mm-hmm. And then I will say personally, I try to play a superstar in pretty much every lineup, which is something I've just kind of been analyzing over the week on what tends to seem to work the first 6 weeks of Rainmakers and what is not optimal, but I'm seeing a lot. And when you're analyzing these contests, it's different than DFS, because DFS, there's one way to play. There's certain constructions that you never want to do. You never want to play a backup quarterback or a wide receiver 3 or anything like that, unless you think this game's going to go nuclear, but it's still not the greatest strategy. There's stacking strategies and everything like that. In Rainmakers, we have the wrinkle of you have to own the cards to play the cards. And so a lot of the lineups that you see with people putting in kickers and defenses and backups and injured players would be clearly wrong in regular DFS, but in Rainmakers, most likely that's all they had. They didn't want to pay 50, 100, 1,000, whatever dollars to get in a highly projected player. They just wanted to hopefully min cash. And so you see about a quarter of the lineups in each tier that are just throwing what they can into a lineup and hoping that they make some money out of it, because otherwise those are just dead cards. So it's hard to analyze what works and what doesn't work. But some of the things that have been pretty strong correlation data has been playing at least, or playing a superstar in every lineup. Reason being is DraftKings did a pretty good job of targeting who's going to have really high games for their first round of superstars. Now we have Aaron Rodgers, we have Najee Harris that have just been god awful that you don't want to play. But for the most part, most of the superstars are still the best at their positions. And while it may not be the exact optimal score, if you play a superstar each week, you're going to get close enough there that you're going to get probably a top 10 finish, if not take it all down, just because with any tournament, the rule of DFS, you're not trying to get the absolute maximum score possible. You're trying to beat everybody else. Yeah, you want to get the top score of the tournament. It may not be the top score possible, but you're just trying to beat other people. And there is definitely in the higher tiers a good cushion between what the optimal score is and what was the winning lineup on most weeks. One thing about these superstars is that they have such a solid floor and such a potential to put up 30, 40 point games. We've seen most of the 30, 40 point games be put up from these superstars. And for the most part, they're not going to give you anything less than like 15 points. So playing it just gives your floor high. You don't need 30 points from every player. It's nice, but you can get a 15-point game from a player and still take down these tournaments. So one thing I'm trying to do is making sure not just any superstar, but certain superstars that can easily put up 30, 40-point games in each lineup is just a safe way. They're usually cheaper than a Jamar Chase is much cheaper than a Stephon Diggs. And so they're a lot easier to acquire. And so that's been my strategy for right now. And it's been working out pretty well, but obviously you need the other pieces to do well to take something down. But everything else, people are stacking. They're doing the most popular one is quarterback, wide receiver with a bring back. But we're really not seeing a bunch of secondary game stacks. If it's not that, people are just throwing in random players that are just projected highly. But there's just not enough data, and there's a lot of noise from people that just want to throw the cards they have in. But so I'm going to try that this week. I'm going to try basically making sure I have like kind of rank the superstars and make sure I have like one of the top 5 in for the season, or for the slate, and see how that goes.
Yeah, definitely. Excellent. Great analysis, right? We talk about it every week, like, playing a superstar, you're going to have to give up on a superstar somewhere else, right? So if you're playing, like, let's say Austin Eckler this week, that means you're not playing Jamar Chase, you're not playing Patrick Mahomes, you're not playing some of these other players that are also in great spots. So it's definitely a key point of differentiation there.
Yeah, and next week it's going to get even more interesting. I think they said it's not going to be until week 9 that it's implemented. But next week they announced the new round of superstars, and potentially some of the current ones losing their status based on how they're doing so far this season. And so we expect players like Saquon, Nick Chubb, Tyreek Hill all to get superstar status. And so you have to make even more decisions on who you get to play and who you don't get to play. Whereas right now you can still make a pretty elite team with little downside risk, even playing a superstar. But hopefully if they balance it correctly, you're going to have to make some real decisions after week 8.
Yeah, with that said, there'll be players that are losing their superstar status as well too. So, I've already kind of noted one that I'm looking at, Jonathan Taylor, that might lose his superstar status and will be a good fit in every other lineup. Are there any players that you're looking at, Derek?
The main one I'm looking at is CeeDee Lamb. Right now, he's wide receiver 18 in DraftKings scoring, and Dak's coming back this week. He's been having to take passes from Cooper Rush, who isn't terrible, but he's got his limitations. And so it will be interesting to see with Dak back if he really catapults, and what DraftKings decides to do with CeeDee. Because if they remove his superstar status and he becomes this target monster for Dak, it could mean that he's similar to Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs right now, where you want as much of him as possible. But it could also be, we saw in week 1 with Dak that CeeDee, he got targets, but he wasn't doing anything special. And then if he still keeps the superstar status, even especially if he takes a step back, if Dak likes Dalton Schultz and Michael Gallup better and he spreads the ball around a lot more, then you really don't want to be playing CD due to his superstar status. So there's a lot of unknown coming up with CD, and he's outside the threshold currently for a superstar status. So I'm keeping an eye on him. I've bought a couple of them. I think I've got about 4 of his rares right now, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not they keep his status.
Yeah, super sharp, man. Totally agree with that. CD Lamb is someone that I picked up as well. Just has that 1 or 2 games in him where he's going to break the slate, especially with Dak back. I think it does raise his ceiling, so I think that's super sharp. What about you, Jake? You got any players that you're looking at?
Yeah, in terms of not guys who are going to lose it, but in terms of guys who are going to gain status, a couple obvious ones. Saquon, like for sure, is going to be superstar. Tyreek as well, I would say for sure superstar. But I think some interesting ones that you might think would become a superstar that actually aren't because of the rule that DraftKings implemented that if there's already a superstar on a team, that they're not going to add another one onto there. So Steph Diggs is a huge one. We're kind of seeing that with his price. I mean, he's obviously going off as well, but his price is at an even more of a premium because of the fact that he can't become a superstar because Josh Allen is already a superstar. So you'll be able to play him up a tier. And that's a pretty big bonus for a lot of people. And that's why we see Steph Diggs as like the most inflated price right now. I mean, along with the fact that he's an excellent wide receiver, obviously.
Yeah, and on that note, you have Kelsey and Patrick Mahomes as well,
Yep.
right? Although Kelsey being a tight end, they just have a lower ceiling in general, but still, Kelsey always has that 25-point, 30-point potential, as we saw with the 4 touchdowns in this game versus the Raiders. But yeah, excellent point there. I do just want to note that running backs and wide receivers / tight ends can still be superstars on the same team. So it's just the QB, wide receiver, QB, tight end stack that they can't have to. So just wanted to clarify that for the audience. But yeah, your point is well taken, and Diggs is definitely well deserving of his price at that point.
Do you guys think that players that are having a few good games, but they're not as consistent, players like Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall is similar to that. Players like AJ Brown, Chris Olave, where they're technically on the threshold, but they're not breaking slates nearly as much as guys like Tyreek or Saquon. Do you think DraftKings will get aggressive and just try and get the 25, get up to where they said the 25 maximum superstars? They try to hit that number to make it a lot more decisions, or do you think they just go for the clear outliers, the Saquons, the Nick Chubbs, the Tyreek Hills?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think they'll go for I think they'll just go for what makes sense. I think they set a criteria, right? It's top 10 total points and then top 10 average points as well. So guys who fit in there, I think they'll slot them in if they don't have on the team, and then if not, then they won't make them a superstar. And I guess they'll probably do it in terms of, you probably be able to determine, based on the criteria they laid out, what it's going to be. Whoever has the highest points for that category, they'll add them on there.
Yeah, that's why I'm curious about guys like Breece Hall that technically meet the criteria. It's just they've just kind of been a little bit under the radar, but he's top 10s and average points and top 10s and total points. And so I'm curious if they do someone like Breece Hall versus guys that have just been completely nasty, like Saquon.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a mix. Maybe it's a bit of a contrarian take. I think they're going to go based off the top 10, but also apply a sort of eye test to it as well. Mm-hmm. Just for the reasons you mentioned. I think this is just feeling, no basis in history or things that they've said, but I don't think that they're going to make a player a superstar who, the public is not going to think is a superstar, right? Doesn't really make too much sense in my eyes.
That's why I wonder if they do Waddle as well. Waddle meets their criteria, but a lot of people feel like he's just the second fiddle to Tyreek. So while he meets the criteria, I don't feel like from the eye test or from your just general perception, he would be a superstar. So I'd be surprised if they did him, even though he meets the requirements.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all those points there, fellas. I think I agree with JJ. I think a lot of it is going to be public perception as well, right? And kind of who the public sees as those superstar players, obviously with it matching production along the way as well. So I think some really valuable insights there. And again, some of the speculation game that we like to play here, who is going to be a superstar and who is not going to be, it's going to affect the value in the marketplace 100% as we've seen. So it's something to kind of look forward to and monitor here moving forward. All right. Well, that was some good meat on the bone, everyone. A couple nice, juicy segments of kind of deep diving some marketplace insights and strategies here moving forward. Let's go ahead and move into the slate here a little bit. We actually have a pretty tight little slate of games upcoming into the week. Are there any stacks or players that you guys have your eye on coming up here in week 7 of the NFL? JJ, did you want to go ahead and lead us there?
Yeah, sure. I have a lot of stacks that I'm looking at. We talked about a game stack. I think this Baltimore Cleveland game is probably going to play to the over, just based on what I'm thinking and how I'm seeing it. So I'm just gonna game stack that game for one of my lineups. Just have Lamar, Andrews, Chubb, Cooper, and probably Drake in there. Just 5-stack it and see what happens. Otherwise, I think it'll probably bust. I don't see the potential for kind of a middle ground for that game. Sorry, I see the potential. I think it's a less likely outcome for me personally. I do like the chalk games this week, so I'm mostly going to be eating more of the chalk this week. The Seattle Chargers game, I think I'll have a lot of exposure there. Not going to have any Herbert stacks or Geno stacks, but would like the players in this kind of secondary stack concept that you guys talked about. So I'll have, kind of like Eckler Lockett / Williams Lockett pairings and things like that as well. Otherwise, one of my kind of stacks that I think is going under the radar that if there's any week for him to smash, it's going to be this one is Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to be playing Aaron Rodgers and Lazard in one of my lineups and hoping for the best. Not going to go with a bring back because, I don't like anything that's going on there. Although I'd say with Taylor Heineke at the helm, probably the best week McLaurin is going to have, and probably we'll see more usage. So I'll have exposure in my DFS, but probably not in Rainmakers.
Jake, anything catching your eye this week?
Yeah, I'd say the Seattle Chargers game probably is the biggest one for me. There's a lot of opportunity there for high scoring. With Herbert, Eckler, Mike Williams, Kenneth Walker breaking onto the scene now, and Lockett, Geno, Metcalf, like all those guys. There's a lot of options there in that game, and I think it can get run up. I think both offenses can really put up points, and Chargers have showed a shakier defense, even though they have a lot of talent there, especially in terms of against the run game. So I really like Kenneth Walker this week. And then Seahawks defense in general has just not been good at all. So I like pretty much everyone on the Chargers this week. So that's definitely the game I'm going to be targeting.
Love it. What about you, Tarek? Anything catching your eye on the slate this week?
Detroit, Dallas. Everybody's seen the vaunted Dallas Cowboys defense and is expecting this to be just kind of a slow Dallas takes control of the game. They run it a lot. But there is a lot of weapons on Detroit, and they are all back and healthy now. We have Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and DeAndre Swift that are going to be playing that haven't been playing in weeks. And we saw what they did even without everybody being healthy against Seattle. And so I do expect there to be some turnovers. I do expect some sacks. But if Detroit can get it going with all their studs back and healthy, then this could be a quiet shootout of a game with CeeDee Lamb going off, Dak going off, Amon-Ra, DeAndre Swift, and even in regular DFS, not the especially the Detroit side of ownership. I know people love CeeDee in regular DFS, but the Detroit side, nobody's really on Swift or Amon-Ra because they're expecting Dallas defense to handle things. But I really like that as a pivot of something that could absolutely blow up.
Yeah, I love all those calls. I think Obviously in DFS as well, it's kind of we're seeing some of the concentration of ownerships as well. I think with Dak obviously going up against that Detroit defense, it's an easy play and the pieces fit. Love the Aaron Rodgers call too there, JJ. I definitely had my eye there as well. Seems like some squeaky wheel going on there with Aaron Rodgers and getting that offense back on track here, and obviously the matchup presents a favorable one for him and the rest of those pass catchers that you could probably get for pretty cheap at the end of the day as well. So
Nice. And obviously, we're going back to the well with Burrow Chase.
absolutely. That's good. That's on the radar 100%. Gotta fill those narratives, right?
I mean, the Falcons, man. I mean, come on. How are you not playing every piece of the Bengals offense against that team? They had a good showing against 49ers. Really surprised me, but, still they were able to put up points against them. So,
and it's one of those things. A lot of people are going to try and do bringbacks with Pitts in London, and I think that might actually be a mistake. I think you just do Bengals only, and let them run it with 3 different backs 30 times a game and throw 6 passes or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, I don't disagree there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not banking on Pitts getting 2 targets for 2 touchdowns for 30 yards. And even then, that's not even a good line for this Rainmakers.
For sure, especially in Rainmakers, right? It's like the opportunity cost of someone you can play in that spot, and the game stack just isn't as required as it is maybe for DFS GPP. At the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't see either of them putting up 25 points. Even like I could see Drake London has an amazing efficiency game and gets 100 yards and a touchdown. He could sniff 20 points, but that's still probably not going to win it. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things where you stack the Cincinnati side and hope that Atlanta can pressure them enough that they just keep throwing the ball.
I do want to say I am thinking about playing defense this week in one of my lineups. I do think there's a ceiling with this Cowboys game, just in case it busts, right? I mean, I'm not going to play it with a lot of my top players, right? This will probably be one of those where I put placeholders in place, right? I'll put maybe Dallas D, maybe Zeke. And then if they pop off, I'll fill out the rest with the late slate. But otherwise, just kind of see where that goes.
I think that's I think that's one of the 2 ways. It either is a shootout or Dallas defense just destroys Jared Goff. One of the 2 things. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, let's transition into our favorite weekly segment at this point. I think the lineup challenge. We've been for those of you new to the show, we've been constructing a Rainmakers lineup. We started with $50 and kind of have been piecing together a lineup week to week. Some weeks we make a change on it. Other weeks we kind of just collect our winnings and move on. This week we are presented with some challenges. We're dealing with some injuries and a relatively low budget, all things considered. So we'll go ahead and talk through it with the crew. Derek, did you want to go ahead and pull up that lineup and we can talk through it and get some insight here?
Yeah, let me do that for you guys. All right, so this was our team from last week. There's one really big problem that we can all see right now, but honestly, it did pretty well. Trevor Lawrence did really a lot better than we expected against Indy. Pretty pleased with it. Min cashed again in the single entry, and we got a glaring issue in Marquise Brown on this team. Before it was, it's a showdown game, and we'll have to get someone new and just sell him off. Now he's out for 6 weeks. We have, as this winnings, we have basically $6 set aside to replace him. Everybody else is on the main slate. We'll have to play Christian McCaffrey, and he might give us a 0. So first, I'm thinking because of that, do you guys want to forgo the single entry and do just a cash line where the cash, a bankroll booster? Let me rephrase that. Because Christian McCaffrey is out and we're going to have to buy someone that probably isn't optimal, do you guys want to just stick this in the bankroll booster instead of the single entry, since the cash line is going to be much lower, and just save up that $5 and get a good upgrade next week, or do you want to continue with Christian McCaffrey and try to get him in cash with someone else?
I got kind of a different take, if that's
Go
all
for
right.
Yeah.
I think it's a good sell McCaffrey week. I mean, we've wanted to move into a superstar, maybe a quarterback, or a wide receiver. There's definitely a few options. I think at those two. Probably you're seeing McCaffrey pumped a bit. Let me just check his prices. I think he's up to 17, which is good. We bought him around 11, 12 or something like that. Sorry, he's at 15. I guess
great.
the news, which is good. And then we can kind of cash out and buy like a good tier 2 running back or low end tier 1, and then kind of try to make an upgrade at QB. But we'll see how we can maneuver with this.
Yeah. So with that and with him selling off, we'd probably have $21 for two positions if we wanted to do that and just get it stronger, which is actually a good amount of money. So I'm good with that if you guys are. Let me bring it over to this. And I already had him slotted in, but we can take him out and come up with, we talked about upgrading to a quarterback. We can swap it in. I think Trevor Lawrence, what is he right now?
Let me check for you.
It's about $10 right now.
$10. So how much does that give us to work with total?
That'd be 34 for 3.
Not bad. Not bad.
No, it's not.
It's like, $21 or there's two options that I see for quarterback, right? If we wanted to, Herbert at 15. If we think that's a good option, if we think he might lose a superstar, then we could, get a superstar elsewhere potentially as well. Otherwise, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson at the $22 range, and then that gives us like $6 between the other two positions. I think that's workable. Wait, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in this right now. I'm trying to follow here. I think we should do something a little simpler and just kind of sell off and find a couple of replacements real quick.
Sell off the whole thing and do that?
No, I meant I think we should just replace Marquise Brown for simplicity. It's kind of.
Okay, so you want to keep Christian McCaffrey then on the team?
Yeah.
Okay. We can try it that way. The main thing I would say then is probably looking at it, it'd probably be Zeke or Cortland Sutton that are around the $6 mark. If you want to keep Christian McCaffrey. Would probably be, I think they're the highest projected around that.
It's tough. I do like Zeke this week, but not week to week.
Yeah. Well, I would say, this week is what he would be a rental for this week as a good floor. And then we have Christian McCaffrey. If we keep Christian McCaffrey, then our running back floor for this lineup just went way up. So,
that might be it. I mean, I think it still has potential to take it down. It has the stack there, 2 running backs. It got the exposure to the high scoring game. I think that's not a bad play either.
We can do that. So you want to still throw it into single entry then and see how high up it gets?
Yeah, I think there's clear upside here. 120 point potential maybe. Trevor Lawrence is probably going to be running it in just because none of those receivers outside of maybe Kirk can catch touchdowns. Giants have been vulnerable to that, right? The run.
Yeah, it will be a beautiful thing. So, all right, let's do that though. You guys agree Zeke over Cortland Sutton for this week?
For this week, and then reassess. Yeah,
and then reassess.
Keep it simple.
All right.
I love the thought process though. There, JJ. I think always try to capture some of that upside as well with some of the breaking news and marketplace upside, I should say, and reconfigure the lineup as needed and pocket some extra cash along the way as well. I think that all plays into it very well. But I do think also, to Jake's point, for simplicity's sake, kind of keep things rolling along here and see if we can just capture a couple more small wins and then maybe roll that into an upgrade at quarterback here in the coming weeks. I think would be something to aim for.
And
yeah,
don't forget,
definitely.
because of what we're doing here, we're not selling off Marquise Brown right now. He's just going to be sitting on our sidelines. And so we do have some options now when he comes back, or we could sell someone off when he comes back as well too. But yeah. So we will go with this. We'll go with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, Christian McCaffrey. We'll see if he plays. If so, we'll hope he gets some touchdowns and gets like 10, 15 points for us. Lockett, the Kirk, or the stack, and then Zeke as a nice floor with upside play.
Love it.
Love it.
Let's get that lineup in there, and hopefully we pull down another cashing dub. I think every week we cash with this lineup. I consider it a win. So we'll keep the good times rolling, and hopefully we can kind of capture some of that upside too here along the way.
Man, didn't it look good though? Starting into last week for this lineup, it looked insane. And it had that secondary stack with the Brown and Lockett. Just didn't fall our way, but still cashed.
Very good. All right. Well, as we kind of move into the end of the show here, flowing right along, Jake, did you have a magical pack that you wanted to pop up for the crew here and see if we can test our RNG luck?
All right, let's get into it. I don't have as good a pack this week as past weeks. Unfortunately, I didn't hit anything big, but we do have a skill starter elite pack here, tier 2.
Let's go.
We'll see what happens. Interesting note, by the way, that we hadn't touched on yet is that DraftKings actually reduced pack prices on the market by 10%, and they're actually going to continue to reduce prices as season goes on. I think they're doing it every few weeks or so by 10% each week. So it's going to be 20%, I think, like week 9, 30%, and then 40% the following few weeks. To kind of price themselves the same as the market, because as we've expected, and as we see by the charts from earlier on, player prices decrease as the year goes on, because there's less available money as the year goes on that you can win with these players, and DraftKings hasn't promised a ton of utility for these cards in future years. So people are obviously going to be selling off, and it's going to be cheaper and cheaper as the year goes on. So they're trying to adjust for that. But yeah, let's get into it.
Let's get it.
I think you can hit Amon Ra in this pack, but
Ooh,
all right.
Really?
I'm not sure.
That'd be a
That would
great
be
hit.
amazing.
Come
Let's
on,
go.
give me Amon Ra then.
Let's go. I feel it. I feel something juicy.
Okay, elite.
No upgrade, but we'll take it.
And Noah.
Oh, I got excited. I saw the green. I was like, lock it. Oh,
Well, okay.
Sell him into showdown.
Nothing special here, fortunately. What are you going to do?
That's
What are
okay.
you going to do? The way the cookie crumbles, as we like to call it, but it got our DGen juices flowing.
It did.
Right?
It did.
That's all we can ask for.
It did. That's true.
Little
You
warmer
get the
in here.
rush still,
Yeah.
at least, for the pack opening. That's all we can really ask
It's
for,
all
right?
right. We are just accumulating that RNG karma. Last week's pack rip wasn't super good either, but we'll hit on one of these 1 week, and we'll make sure it all counts for something at the end of the day. We'll appreciate you donating that pack there, Jake, and appreciate the shout on the marketplace. Hey, if you want to, again, get those DGen juices flowing, go rip some packs at a discounted price here on the marketplace. I'm sure DraftKings will appreciate it very much.
I'm sure they will.
Awesome. Well, that's going to conclude our 4th episode of Make It Rain Now, presented by Metaverse HQ. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel here. All the socials right here below. Give us some interaction. Go ahead and tell us what players are you looking forward to playing this week. Some stacks that you might be eyeing up. Any marketplace edges that you see. Go ahead and let us know, and we'll be sure to incorporate that into future episodes as well. On that note, really appreciate everyone joining us today. Good luck in the upcoming slate, and hey, let's make it rain.